All right, I'm just Bodo, and you can just call me Bodo. And welcome to the part 2 of my Getting Good guide. Like I said in the previous video, this is aimed towards if you're new or struggling in terms of PvP, or if you're just someone that's curious and wants to learn more, this is the perfect video for you. This is part 2. This is going to cover more class roles and responsibility. Maybe later on I'll have a part 3 talking about other stuff. I don't really quite know yet. But for this video, we're going to be talking about strong points of each class, how to play them in like generally on like a baseline, and I'll also make sure that every single class that we talk about, I talk about like 3v3s, 5v5s, 8v8s, and then the larger scale like 20v20s and above. All right, just make sure I got everything ready. No flashbangs this episode. Just make sure I got everything lined up. All right, I can even zoom in a little bit more. Or just take a hair out. Yeah, that's probably better. My big head's gonna block everything, so turn this off. Perfect. All right, so let's get to it. Let's start with Cleric. Let me get my fancy little laser pointer. Boom, boom, boom. Let's start with Cleric. Now, for Cleric, some of the major characteristics for Cleric is that they have very high single target healing. I think most people just assume that Cleric can just like all of their healing is just the best in the game. I would say their AoE healing is quite strong. They have some quite strong abilities that also shield you, heal you, and give you like heal over time that you can cast every 10 seconds. They have good healing abilities that can just jump to multiple different targets in the chain. But in terms of overall quality of the heals, I think really there's only one really good AoE heal, and there's a bunch of single target heals that are just, weighs it more towards a single target healing type. But also, besides the healing, they have probably the best cleanse in the game. A few other classes can kind of cleanse themselves and do stuff like that, but in terms of Cleric, you can cleanse 3 debuffs at a time. Very clutch. There is no cooldown on your cleanse ability. You can just spam it over and over and over and cleanse your whole team. Also, medium to very high survivability. This just depends on proper gear and also your positioning. But if you're just baseline level, starting off as a Cleric, you're not going to really survive a lot of stuff. But as you develop your character and you get better at Cleric, you're pretty much impossible to kill unless you get CC and completely locked down. The other big thing to really know about the Cleric is that you have very low mobility. Besides your dodge rolls, you have your Wings of Salvation as your other CC breaker, and also kind of like get out of jail dash that you can go to another target. You also give yourself a little bit of shielding, but in terms of like mobility, that's pretty much it. So positioning, not going too deep into the enemy team, staying around your midline or backline is very, very important. Sometimes I like to push my luck in like smaller formats, like a 3v3 or 5v5, and I'll play a lot closer. And that's just because I know I can handle like 2 or 3 people on top of me just with my gear. But in terms of overall like positioning, medium and backline is typically where you want to stay. Now, to break down how you should kind of generally play the Cleric needs to focus on healing primarily, no duh, and positioning while calling out players that are too far away when they need heals. So let's just say you have a rogue on your team and he's getting pretty low. It's smart and proactive, especially if you're in smaller PvP side, like 3v3s, 5v5s, 8v8s, to let him know that your rogue's way too far away, that you're going to have to start back palading while fighting, or just land some CC and just get a lot closer to you if you're the Cleric, to get heals. That is part of your job. Once you get to large scale like 20v20, not so much. You don't really want to be talking over your shot caller and your sub callers that are maybe calling out certain things like route rotations and stuff like that. But it is pretty important that on a smaller scale, you are trying to be somewhat vocal. Next, let's go to bards. Now, bards have high to very high survivability. If you ever play a bard and you kind of played around with your movement speed and your dashes, you have like your dodge rolls, your 2 dashes, plus your movement speed to increase melodies, and on top of that, your class is really good at just running. Like instead of just dodging, just use your run key and you'll be going at Mach 10. Now with proper mechanics, awareness, and gear, that's where we would get that super high survivability, like almost untouchable. Probably more survivability than a tank or a cleric at that point. But at a base level, even if you're just playing the cleric for the first time, you're going to notice right away you have a lot of survivability. Just you have so many outs. In terms of healing and shielding, which the cleric is very good at and super clutch with, it's kind of like medium level-ish. It's not stellar, but it helps out a lot in a team. It's very good if your team's going to engage. If you're going to follow up with your team, spamming the AoE shielding is really, really helpful, even if it's not that much. And using all your utility to benefit your team, maybe cash in all your resident stats to blow someone up, stuff like that. You have high to very high mobility, like we kind of already talked about that with survivability, but with proper situational awareness and cooldown management, no one should ever be able to catch you. You have probably some of the best utility in the game. You're kind of the Swiss Army knife. In terms of like the summoner, so supposed to be the Swiss Army knife, I think Bard is the true Swiss Army knife just because of all the utility you can provide. I know summoner's supposed to like cover multiple roles, but even now in the current iteration, it doesn't even do that well of a job doing that. But there is something that I think Summoner excels at that a lot of people haven't really started doing yet, because not a lot of people are scrimming at the moment, and the people that have been scrimming a lot at the moment are probably more the people on Resna, because they're all just going super hardcore. But I'm on Shoal, so we're about typically a month behind them. But in terms of everybody wanting to scrim, so how should you play the Bard? Bard needs to focus on supporting team engagements or disengagements, while also keeping an eye on their healer to help. Bards can be super clutch in saving your healer, but typically I would say you're more team focused support than specifically always trying to gambit your healer that's getting focused or something like that. I'd say it's a lot better for your Bard to use your gambit and stuff like that on maybe your DPS that's getting focused, or your tank that isn't getting healed in time. It's probably a better use case. But if your team's just stomping and they're doing so good, then having that backup gambit for any situation is a good situation. Now let's move on to tank. Tank has very high survivability. Man, I can't even speak. And medium to high damage with proper gear. A lot of CC, 5 in fact, and powerful defensive abilities to save allies. Now this last bit right here, not a lot of tanks do, and not a lot of tanks use the powerful defensive abilities to save their allies. They'll use their intercept as another gap closer on an enemy, but I like people saving their intercept as a defensive cooldown to help reposition yourself to an ally, which also gives them temporary health, and also help to save an ally that's probably getting focused down, maybe range DPS, maybe your cleric, whoever it is. So typically how I'd recommend to play a tank as well before we get into this part is that a lot of tanks like to play solo. They like to play Rambo, essentially. I think that's a waste. I think the best use case of a tank is to, at the initial beginning, let's say, even if it's 3v3, 5v5s, 8v8s, you might want to group up or be pretty much like joined to the hip with a fighter to help set up a fighter, give him some more survivability with your aura and your protection, and just become like a 2-man like bully team essentially. I think that's the best case that a tank can like use his full kit plus push someone up way higher than what they typically could. Even if you're a tank grouping up with a rogue, just diving in on that backline together while having your aura helping him out and your protection helping him out, you can do a lot of crazy trouble in the 3v3, 5v5, and 8v8 formats. Once you get to larger, like 20 mans, you're typically playing more as to set up your team. You're trying to grapple people in while maybe a rogue jumps on to lock them down, and then you'll set up a wall to block off a retreat or any assistance, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that tank can do. So tank neither focuses on pressuring one person. Tanks need to either focus on pressuring one person. So let's say the enemy team has a ranger or a mage. The tank can essentially just turn a 5v5 into a 4v4 with a 1v1 on the side, or even pressuring out a cleric. You could be pressuring out a bard, actually, because you have a lot of dashes. You can really pressure out anybody you want. You can just pick one person, just go in and just shut them down. And typically when you do that, you would want a fighter to like piggyback off of you, and you guys can get a very easy kill and set them up. But you could also do that with a rogue as well, very easily, and any other range class as well. Or focus on playing a more defensive to protect your teammates. In large scale, obviously, you have a lot of good defensive abilities that are like AoE that can help out your team. On the smaller scale, you can still use those same abilities, plus all your other defensive abilities to keep, at least that one person that's getting focused alive. Now, I just to correct, I know we're going into the fighter next. With the bard, I didn't really bring up 3v3s, 5v5s, 8v8s, or the 20v20s and aboves. That's just because I think it's quite self-explanatory that in all situations, bard is doing the same thing most of the time, because a lot of his stuff is AoE. Except on the smaller end, I guess I could add here with the bard is that 3v3s and 5v5s, you get a lot more freedom to really use your resonance stacks for damage on single targets than in 8v8s or even 20v20s. But yeah, that's the only really thing to add. Now let's start with fighter. Now, fighter has very high damage. It's melee damage though. Has medium mobility, medium to high survivability with proper gear and teamwork. Like I said, working in tandem with a tank. And requires resource to set up to pop off. Unfortunately, as a fighter, you're going to be sitting with a longbow for maybe the first half of the fight to generate as much resource as possible, so that you can have close to a full bar or full bar, so you can all in and just pop off. You can all in and pop off even with a little bit of resource, because there's ways for you to gain resource back and stuff like that. But typically when I see fighters, like really good fighters, they try to slow roll it in the beginning to generate resources and do some like just cheeky trades with melee abilities and stuff like that. But they try to play a little bit reserved, a little bit defensive, and then once they get enough resource that they're comfortable with, that's when they try to commit. And typically when they commit, they try to wait for someone to set them up. So fighters need to build up resource while waiting to follow up all of their damage when a teammate lands a big CC. And that's very important as a fighter. 3v3s, fighters are strong. 5v5s, fighters are strong. But typically they're the strongest when they're paired with a tank. If you have just a tank and a fighter working in tandem, it is a very good and natural combo between the two classes. And that's what I would strongly recommend, because you can still chase down a lot of targets while building up your resource and still be safe while paired with a tank. So you don't have to play a little bit defensive and rangy at the start. You can just start right off the bat, having the two working in tandem. In larger scale, though, I gotta keep remembering talking about these formats. In larger scale, they're kind of poop. 20v20s and above, it's very hard to find a spot for the fighter to really pop off. If I had to, like, just say if I was shot calling and I actually cared about large scale, because I'm more of an arena guy myself, I would probably put fighters in tandems with tanks. And then whenever a fighter grapples or pulls someone's in, and let's say someone like a rogue CC chains that person down, by the time the tank puts up their wall to make a barrier, natural barrier, but also to block any chance of retreat, the fighter should just collapse exactly on that target and get that target as low as possible for maybe the rogue or the tank to finish them off, or some range to finish them off. That is an actual use case for the fighter, besides an all-in dive on the enemy team and him just whirling to victory. Now, when it comes to Mage, Mage has very high single target, which is more burst damage, and it's kind of easy to learn. They do have a lot of very high AoE damage as well, but typically the high single target burst damage for 3v3, 5v5, and 8v8 is the way to go. Once you get to 20 v20 and above, you kind of want to lean into more your AoE stuff, but you still want to have some single target as well, because maybe if you dive in and you're focusing on a specific target, or you see a target gets super low and you can quickly target of target, or just swap targets and just finish them off with single target, stuff like that. They kind of have medium mobility. They have like a really good teleport, kind of like how Fighter has a really good dash, and they also have a secondary kind of smaller mobility ability as well. But the Mage teleport is an instant, super far away teleport. It's also CC breaker. Just that alone gives it kind of a medium mobility. But once you kind of burnt that, you're kind of sit and duck. So that's something to be very careful about with the Mage. Positioning is very important with the Mage. Low to high survivability with proper gear. You're not going to have very high survivability. You're kind of in the same situation as a Fighter, where if you have really good proper positioning, your survivability skyrockets a lot. But having stuff like maybe magical heavy armor, and really trying to mid-maxing your health versus your resistance stats is super important with Mage, because a lot of your damage is kind of close quarter. It's not like melee close quarter, but it's like 10 feet of the target close quarter. So mid-maxing that and giving yourself a good health pool and defensive stats is very smart if you're a Mage player. Mage needs to play around their team looking for opportunities to use their burst damage, preferably when a teammate lands a big CC. Obviously, in larger scale fights, your job is really just to put down a bunch of AoE. Specifically, you may want to reserve some of your higher damage abilities for when there's a big CC chain that lands. It just depends on how your raid wants you to use your abilities, because I think Mage just throwing out random abilities constantly, especially in large scale, is useless. I think it's better to time it with a bunch of other mages and like roots that hit like a big pool of targets. I think that's the optimal way to really play Mage. But yes, you're playing around your team. You're looking for opportunities for your team to set you up. And then if you see something like a Fighter collapse on someone because their tank set them up, that's the point where you want to press your go button and also put as much single target burst damage into whatever your Fighter is trying to blow up. That is how you want to play as a Mage. You kind of want to hover the people that you know that will naturally set up an opportunity point for you. Very important. Now we have the Ranger. The Ranger has a very high single target burst damage, very similar to the Mage, with proper mechanics and awareness. I probably should have had this also with the Mage as well, but Mage is a lot more easier. With the awareness part, what I mean is, with the range, like using your snipe, there's usually a cast time associated. So it's not like the Mage where you have a huge instant burst damage rotation. With the Ranger, you have to almost prep your damage beforehand. So if you hear a shot call to focus target someone, you better be in range to already pre-cast that snipe. Oh no. Oh no. All right. Well, I was AFK fishing, but I guess I'm not anymore. We know it. Got no more ASMR. But yes, it's very important to make sure you're lined up with other people. Medium mobility. This is very important. Range is very mobile. You have some great ways to get around the map and stay around. You got your airstrike. You got your big backflip or front flip or side flip, however you use it. The one thing I will say about Rangers, similar to Mage, once you burn those very important mobilities, you're a sitting duck. Typically, Mage, if you build them right, you have a lot more survivability than a Ranger. Ranger, unfortunately, if you want to build a Ranger right, you're investing purely into damage and maybe a good amount of health. But in terms of like resistance and stuff like that, unless you're trying to aim for like Rosarium, you got to be very, very careful. Typically, Rangers are a lot more squishier than Mage too, because Mage also have some really good defensive cooldowns as well. So yeah, got to be mobile, got to stay safe. Powerful AoE CC with proper timing and teamwork. That's your big root. You can use kind of your bear traps as well. It's just that it requires a lot of investment to make them actually worthwhile with your skill points. And typically they're better to use if people are focusing on top of you. Like let's say a fighter decides they want to beat you up, or a tank decides they want to beat you up. Playing around your bear traps and like walking around them while placing it down at your feet is definitely a good way to keep yourself alive as well. And because we're talking about survivability, I can just easily say you have low to medium survivability with proper mechanics and even gear. So if you don't have good gear, you're gonna get popped. Even if you have good gear, a lot of the times you're trying to get crit chance through your stuff. You're trying to hit certain thresholds. You're trying to get your snipes to do like 4K damage. So you're sacrificing a lot of potential health or resistance in the sake of getting some certain breakpoints. Now, Ranger needs to focus on setting up their team with roots, their big AoE. With the intent of timing it perfectly with their team to collapse on. I think the biggest issue I see with Rangers is that they'll just throw out their root willy-nilly and they'll kind of shot call it while they're casting it. You do not do that, because people cannot swap targets in time unless you already have your guild already using target of target and stuff like that. You're better off telling your team, hey, I got 3 here. Hey, I got 4 here. I can root. I'm rooting. And that way they have at least some time before you actually click the root button. A big thing too is that a lot of people are having trouble casting the root. If you're an auto attack user, if you just use auto attack, I don't mean the actual auto attack. I mean the auto attack. The constant attacking and you trying to spam root, the auto attack will cancel out a lot of the times of you pressing your root ability. So it's better to manually auto attack by holding it down. And then when you want to cast root, you let go of your auto attack button and you then cast your root. That's how to get more consistent roots out. There was a kind of a bug too with even with going that extra step. Sometimes you would have to spam root like 4 or 5 times. That's also another reason why you kind of want to pre-tell your team that, hey, I see a root opportunity here. I'm rooting, and then you actually root. Also, if for whatever reason, let's say within that 1 second of you shot calling that to your team, people do disperse and the opportunity is not there, then you need to be able to say, never mind, like just call it off. Don't just waste it just to waste it. It's too valuable of an ability. You need to utilize your single target burst damage by focusing a target with other teammates to engage on a target. Now, what I would say is that if you're rooting, let's say like 3 targets, I would say this is a 5v5 situation, and you're rooting like 3 targets, you need to assume that your snipe is not going to hit the target in time. So you need to start focusing more on headshots. And even then you can save your marks. You don't have to burn your marks, because by the time you root, your team's probably already following up on the targets, and you probably just want to use your headshots without a mark to help contribute to finishing them off, like kill securing. That's very important. Now, let's say your root's on cooldown. That's when you're looking for snipe opportunities. That's when you're looking for your team, like let's say the odd tank chasing someone down, and getting ready to set up a kill. That's you want to start hovering, kind of like a mage. You want to hover around those kill opportunities before it actually happens. Now let's move on to Rogue. Rogue has very high, I think I said 3v3, 5v5s, 8v8s. Ranger is very good. 20v20s, rangers are the best. When it comes to large scale, rangers are the best. In 3v3s and 5v5s, your root is just that powerful that even if you're rooting just one or two people, it is the perfect follow up. In 5v5s, I think it's where it becomes like the most ideal. 8v8s, it becomes even more ideal, and then the higher you go, the better it is. Now rogues. Rogues have very high positional damage. They have, so essentially backstab damage. They have a lot of CC. They're very high mobility and have medium to very high survivability with proper mechanics and situational awareness. And also, the big thing about mechanics with rogue is that it's just a high skill, high positional class. A lot of people think rogue can just walk up and just do damage on you. That is not the case. Typically, rogues want you to run away so that you surrender your backside to them. A very easy way to counter a rogue is just facing them. And the difference is that a backstab could do upwards to 2,000 damage easy. A front stab could do upwards to like 800 damage. So just like backpedaling while facing a rogue nerfs a rogue a lot of the times in terms of the damage they can do. So never surrender your back to a rogue. This is coming from a rogue player. But rogue needs to focus on one person to shut them down, while utilizing darts to encap other targets to gain a man advantage. So let's say you are a rogue and you're diving in the backline. The most natural thing to do when you're diving in on someone is that they're going to have maybe one or two teammates peel off to help out that person. You can easily maintain that 1v1 in the backline as long as you have really good like target selection and cycling. If you can cycle your targets properly, you can sleep the other two people that are trying to move in on you, and still shut down that one target, maybe even potentially get a kill. A lot of the times though, in 3v3s and 5v5s, this is very ideal play style to play. Once you get to 8v8s, and even technically 5v5s, if you're playing like a really competitive 5v5 match, you want to play more elusive than that. You may want to jump on someone in the back line to tie them up, while sleep darting other people that are probably trying to come in and to assist that enemy you're trying to tie up. And then also play super elusive and kind of run away a bit, maybe go in stealth, maybe use your grappling hook to just reposition far away, to force them to run towards you, stuff like that. Playing way more elusive, not necessarily to do damage, but to distract people is the best way. And then once you get to like 20v20s, typically the best way to play is to wait for your tank to grapple hook someone, you jump in, tie them down, or if your team decides to all in, you focus clerics, shut down their clerics, stuff like that. Use your AoE kick to set up good kick engagements in like 3v3, 5v5, 8v8, all the way up, stuff like that. It's very, very important. You also need to set up your team with AoE kicks, like I just mentioned, with the intent of timing it perfectly with others to collapse on. So AoE kick is 4 seconds long, and it's very important that you're telling your team your intention before you land the kick. And the reason why is because as soon as that AoE goes off, people can CC break out of it. People can move away to dodge it. It's not that big of an AoE, so you don't have a lot of time to really hover. You need to go in and get that kick as fast as you can, because like I said, the AoE is not that big. So you need to tell your team you're looking for a kick beforehand, so that way they can hover targets and look at your direction and where your intent is on going, and be able to follow up very, very quickly. It's so important as a ranger or as a rogue to tell your team your intent when you're going to land your major AoE CCs. It's so important, and so many people do not do this. It is insane, and it drives me insane too, because I'm very passionate about rogue. I excel at rogue. Ranger was my first class. I also very passionate about ranger, and I excel at ranger. And the fact that both of these two can set up your team so easily and no one calls out their crap ever or their intent ever drives me up the wall. and you should be ashamed of yourself. Now let's talk about Summoner. Now, Summoner, I kind of grouped it down here with Ranger and Rogue for a very particular reason. Now, I think most people are playing Summoner wrong. I think that the people who are playing Summoner more of a caster with their Mystic is playing Summoner correctly. I think if you watch some of the Zypack videos of him on his Summoner, he is outplaying people versus people that have way better gear than him, because he has a lot of CC and ways to screw them up. Summoner can hang. Summoner can do a lot of stuff. But I think where Summoner really excels at, that a lot of people aren't really playing now, yet, soon. Summoner is a very good disruptor. You have a lot of CC. In a way, you're kind of similar to a Rogue. You have multiple sources of CC. It's all range, though, compared to a Rogue, where it's a mixture of range and close quarters. So what a Summoner can really do with like a tank pet is that you can throw your tank pet in, you can Soul Flare for an AoE stun, you can throw your tank pet in, you can spam your tank stomp ability so that it starts with a snare, and I believe the second or third repetitive stomp ends with a stun. It's really good for making teams kind of respect your pet if you're using the tank pet. If these decide to clump up, if you just throw your tank pet on them and you start spamming your tank ability, or use Soul Flare, which is an AoE stun, it will completely disperse them. They will respect your pet the following rounds if you're doing like scrims or something. A great way to use it is like defensively, using it on maybe your Cleric if your Cleric's getting collapse, throwing it on maybe your fighter and tank combo if they're getting collapsed on. Just, you can use it in a lot of different ways. You can use it proactively too, where let's say both teams kind of group up and they just meet in the middle. You can just throw it in the smack middle of the entire fight and just throwing out really good CCs. But you also have abilities like roots, you have silences, you have stuns, you have massive AoE silences. So depending on how you play your Summoner, you can dramatically affect team fights that are just like nameplates on top of nameplates. That's where you really excel at. But where you also excel at is like, let's say someone is chasing your Cleric or chasing a DPS. You have a lot of really good single target range roots and silences that you can help out those people as well. So even though Summoner doesn't do a lot of damage and the AI is broken to absolute crap on the Summoner, there's still a lot of things that you can do to excel in 3v3, in 5v5, in 8v8. And I think, but I'm not going to say it now, 20v20 and above. I think once you get to 20 and 20 and above, you want to be running Mystic all the time. I don't think you want to run Tank Pet at that point. There's too many people that will just target closest enemy and just blow them up, your tank pets, with auto attacks. They could do the reflect tech that as well to kind of do a bunch of damage to people that are attacking the pet with the reflex, but I don't think it's enough to really move the needle. I think at that point you want to rely more on your Mystic, and you want to use your abilities more as defensive abilities than offensive abilities, with your AoE silences and stuns and stuff like that. So yeah, so let's actually start breaking down the Summoner. That's my little rant. Summoner has a lot of CC and buff removal, which is huge. You have low to medium damage, more medium damage, with like really good prioritization of gear and how you build yourself. You have high sustain, which is awesome. You can just leech mana and health from your minions. And because of that, you have a medium to high survivability with proper gear and AI pet management. Like I said, the AI on the pets are broken. As soon as you can get the AI pets to like a more comfortable experience, because a lot of summoners have to like essentially break their fingers by like constantly spamming like follow or go here because the pet doesn't want to listen half the time. So yeah, like once you fix that and that gets more fine-tuned, the survivability will just shoot up way higher because their pets will naturally survive longer, and you can pull them in and out of engagements more easily. So yeah, in terms of like gear though, if you do play a little bit more, less focusing on damage and more on the CC route, I think shooting for like super high survivability gear, like grave plate to keep you alive, and prioritize health and resistances with like just a little bit of damage to your gear, mainly from your weapons and maybe some from your jewelry, is the way to go. I think that is the way to play Summoner. You are a bruiser caster, in my opinion. That is the optimal way to play Summoner. On the high end, maybe you want to lean more towards healing power, just for that one. No, sorry, not healing power, but magical power, just for that one use case of your Mystic Pet. On the lower end, 3v3, 5v5, 8v8, I think going Bruiser Summoner is the way to go. I think it's just too powerful. Summoner need to focus on shutting down one target offensively or defensively. So maybe focusing their Cleric, very good. You also need, because you have that 4-second channel silence, single target. Then you also have that AoE one, but typically that AoE one is better if they're collapsing on top of you and not using it on a target that can easily just dodge roll out of it. You also need to set up your team with Soul Flare with the intent of timing it perfectly with others to collapse on. And Soul Flare is a little bit tricky to land than a insta kick or a hopefully one day insta root. Soul Flare has a 1.2 cast time, if I'm not mistaken. You throwing your pet out to a location also has a bit of a cast time too, so you have to be a lot more proactive with your CC. Which still, it's the same rule of thumb. Let your target know, hey, I'm looking for a Soul Flare. I have my tank pet. I'm looking for a Soul Flare. And then boom, you get it off. Let's say instead of catching the 4 people that it was intended to catch, it only catches the 2. You're still creating an opportunity for a team. But yeah, I hope this video helps you out. That's kind of my TED Talk. I was hoping to make this a short video, but I don't think this is going to be a short video. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you think. I'm very curious to hear more about the Summoner, like what you guys think of the Summoner and how I described to use it. But yes, let me know about your class. I'm coming out every class. Understand this is like the general way of playing your class that I think you should play. This is not hyper specific. I know there's people that are playing Bard as like full damage with utility. I know there's people that are playing Mage as more of a bruiser mage, actually, which is kind of cool. But most people don't play that playstyle. I know there's other playstyles for Rogue that people prefer to play than what I'm talking about, where damage is secondary and breaking people's ankles and shutting people down is the primary way. But let me know down in the comments below. If I got something wrong or you have a different opinion, I really want to hear it. To me, that's just more information that I can pertain to myself. Maybe put it in the future video, maybe a follow-up to this video, or I can just put it in my back pocket for scrims, you know, as we're practicing, waiting for the launch in arenas to get implemented. Yeah, but feel free to let me know in the comments down below, and have a nice day.